Hey folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back, Carlos. It's good to see you.
Welcome back. You've been going tearing through the South on a gas turn like Sherman going through the South, but like with food, eating your way down to Charlotte.
I didn't know Minneapolis was the South. I mean, I was in the South, the new South, as they like to say down in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was in Minneapolis for the Big Ten tournament. We've got a lot going on. You know, the NFL draft is 3-4 weeks away, and we know that that's the second most important season around here because it's the Lions. The Tigers open not quite as we speak, but not too long after we speak here.
Yeah.
They're in Chicago playing the White Sox in a field that used to be called Comiskey and now is called Guaranteed Rate or something. I can't.
Flybynight.com. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I used to go there all the time because our the legendary beat writer John Lowe wasn't too fond of that place in that stadium. So he's like, hey, you go to Chicago. So
he didn't like Yankee Stadium. He didn't like
it's not that we want to go down that rabbit hole, but I remember he loved going to Houston of all places because he loved Nolan Ryan and he liked talking to Nolan Ryan. So he had his reason. That led me to Chicago an awful lot this was a long time ago. But in any case, that's what the Tigers are opening. They're going to win the Central Division, right, Carlos? Which we're going to talk about. Actually, they're going to win 100 games. Let's just say it. That's what's happening. And the fans are going to eat delicious food along the way. But we're going to get all that. We're going to get to all that here in a minute in the second part of the show because we're going to start off with what's been a pretty interesting couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks with Michigan State basketball. I did this real quickly, Carlos. I went to back-to-back tournaments, the Big Ten tournament and the first and second round of the NCAA tournament in Minneapolis and then in Charlotte. And both times I'm sitting down to write about Michigan State, and Michigan upstages them. First, when they fired Juwan Howard, and then the next time when they hired Dusty May, the new coach from Florida Atlantic University. I thought that was
well timed.
Back-to-back weekends.
Well played, Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan flexing their muscles, dropping a firing and then a hiring. But in any case, who do you want to start with? Do you want to start with Michigan, or do you want to start? Because I don't think we recorded last week. And I don't know that we've talked since Juwan Howard's been fired.
That's the most topical. You were at the press conference with Dusty May. So what was your really good column? Very interesting. What was your take on the introduction and the hiring of May?
Well, well, first of all, let's just say Ward Manuel, the Michigan athletic director, acted. I mean, so let's go back and do the math real quick, or do the calendar, Carl. So Michigan plays in the Big Ten tournament, I want to say on a Wednesday night. They were in that early game. They lose to Penn State, if I'm not mistaken. And Juwan Howard,
you to go cover it, right?
Pardon me?
We paid you to go there and cover it, right?
Yeah, because we knew that was going to be Juwan. I mean, we didn't know for sure, but we had a pretty good idea that'd be his last game. And he's fired on that Friday?
Within a week, yeah.
It was 2 days. 2 days later.
2 days? Holy moly.
I want to say it was 2 days later. Yeah, because Michigan State played the Thursday and won their first game, and I don't even remember who they played now. It's terrible. Lost their next game to Purdue on Friday, and the news dropped that same day that Howard had been fired. So, yeah, he was fired like less than 48 hours later after the end of the season.
Wow.
So they go a week, and they find a new coach, and that happens to be Dusty May. That's pretty quick for Ward Manuel, who's taken some heat for various reasons, but we'll see if he got his man. Dusty May has not been a head coach too long, but at least he's been a head coach. And I think that was the main thing. After taking a big swing with Howard and had some success early, and then it didn't end up working out in the end, I think Ward really, really wanted a coach who had shown he could run a program and build a program. I think that was the number one thing after, right? So.
Well, the most important thing was that he was a student manager for Bobby Knight. That's why are people mentioning that? Like, how many student managers did Bobby Knight have? Probably like 100. I mean, like that, come on.
More than that. I'm sure he had more than 100.
People just love to mention that. Like it's some reach back into, and by the way, the general's legacy is a little complicated too, by the way. But anyway, yeah, you know what? You made a point of that in your column. And I think it was good that somebody who's gone through the system, been an assistant and gone through the whole collegiate system of being a student manager and assistant and all this stuff and different programs in the Big Ten. He has obviously big ties to to the area with Eastern Michigan, having been an assistant here and all that, but working his way through the system, building a program at FAU, recruiting, and instead of Juwan Howard coming from the NBA, I mean, it's like at the time, nobody could argue that. And I think when Ward Manuel hired Jim Harbaugh and Juwan Howard, those were just the obvious choices. They were the no-brainer choices. And there was a lot of momentum, by the way, for hiring Howard when it happened. I don't remember exactly where Beeline stood on this. I think he was with the Cavaliers at the time, but I think people, the Fab Five, they were all talking about, let's get Juwan Howard in here, or Fab Five, all this stuff. So it made sense at the time. But now it's always the way in coaching, right? And hiring is you get the opposite of whatever you had. So you had a guy in NBA, no head coaching experience. Now you get the guy who's thoroughly had this arc through college basketball. And now he's coming in as a hoops guy, which is, like you pointed out, kind of like John Beeline, right? No,
for sure. And his look, what was interesting about John Beeline when he got hired is he'd never been an assistant, but he had grinded his way as a head coach at junior college, at several small colleges. Lemoyne College comes to mind. Canisius, I want to say. No, he won everywhere he was. And so, but just his personality a little bit, the offensive leanings, the quest for how to score, the shooting. I mean, there are some of the similarities. Dusty May even reminded me of Beeline just a little bit at the press conference with the way he was dressed. Just there was a interesting sort of Episcopalian crispness. Not that either one of them are, not that Dusty May is, but just he looked like he's. It's funny because John Beeline I don't know if he was a rector or not, but he was involved in the Catholic Church, and I don't know that Dusty May is Catholic or not, but they have that look that they're going to be one of the, involved in a church service in some way, not on a fundamentalist level, but it was just interesting. But, their personalities, for all I know, Dusty May is a little bit more animated in some ways. And he talked about that, he said that he doesn't think that like being a yeller and a screamer really gets you much though, right? No, even though we learned under Bobby Knight, which is, yeah. I mean, you're right. It's such a complicated thing. On the one hand, Bobby Knight he created an entire system of play and an offense, really. The motion offense is sort of his. And he really revolutionized college basketball. It was very influential. It was really, really smart. On the other hand, he was a ragehead who treated people and belittled people just in the nastiest possible way. You can't do that anymore.
But I don't think his coaching tree was like that. They didn't all become little Bobby Knights, In fact, there was a push back against it in some ways.
Mike Krzyzewski is probably the most famous, right? Although Krzyzewski he played for Bobby Knight. He didn't coach. I don't think he coached under him, unless I'm misremembering there. But
I think he was an assistant under him at West Point, wasn't he?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I kind of can never. I can't remember. But
Robin Chan will be our fact checker or stats guy at the end.
Yeah, but it's just interesting. I remember when Howard was hired at the time, there were some that within the program that were a little skeptical because of the lack of experience. And I remember people wanted Shaka Smart, for example, back then, and whatever other hot names were out there, kind of like Dusty May was the hot name now. But as a basketball sort of geek myself, not on that level, of course, I like the way I don't know if this will matter to the fans. It probably should, but I like the way he described what kind of teams he wanted. I mean, he even said we probably will shoot too many 3-pointers, which was funny. But he said we want to be pleasing to the eye. We want to be fun to watch, and that matters because you're not going to win the Big Ten every year. You're not going to get to the Final Four every year. You're going to have some years that are harder than others. But if you're fun to watch, people are going to come. And Chrysler had turned into a mausoleum, right? I mean, that was
worse.
A smart.
It turned into a away game for them.
No, for sure, a couple of times. But the final game, when they played Nebraska, they were lucky if they had 4,000 or 5,000 people there, if that. On senior
spring
day.
Break, though, wasn't it?
Maybe it was spring break, but still, it's never stopped them up at Michigan State. That's a different level of program, but yes. So for him to talk about the style of play that they want to be pleasing to watch, I thought that was interesting. You don't hear coaches talk about, what are fans going to enjoy watching? I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting, and he was going to take a bunch of threes. Does Jack Golke have like a 7th year of eligibility? Can we petition the NCAA for that?
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun?
One thing I wanted to say about the Bobby Knight and the hothead stuff and whatever, and who you are, and he said in his press conference, I think he quoted him. He said, "I will represent this program with class and dignity," and he also talked about, "I'm here to represent the university and you and all this stuff." And that, do you think that was a little bit of a sort of a reference to Howard, and that there was just strife in that program?
That's a good question. I don't know that was conscious. I mean, it's possible that was. I mean, I would imagine that was part of the conversation. Because
normally they don't say that. Normally coaches don't just come in and say, "I'm going to represent with class and dignity," and that's typically not true.
I would imagine that was part of the conversation when they were talking about when Ward Manuel met with him and the recruiters. John Beilein actually was in Maples at the time and drove over to Boca or wherever it was that they met. I think Ward and his people flew down there to meet Dusty May. But that's a good question. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard for me to decipher Michigan because they've got this idea of class and dignity, right? The way they think about themselves, the way the university thinks about itself. And it's just, it's natural there. So maybe you get into Ann Arbor and you get onto that campus and those sorts of things just come out of your mouth because it's the University of Michigan. Because he did talk about, like everybody else does that comes there, the world-class university. He didn't say wealthiest alumni base, but he might as well have said it when he talked about there's no better alumni base. What he means by that is there's no richer alumni base, right?
Or more powerful or influential or bossy or pushy.
No, for sure.
You think the first question, you think Ward's first question was, what do you think of Joe Krabenhoff? What do you think maybe those?
I doubt it. So real quickly before we move to Michigan State, because there's a lot going on there too, Dusty May's got a lot of work. He said he sounded ambitious. He wants to be good next year. He feels like it's critical that they show not a Final Four run necessarily, but that they show some promise in year one. And normally you get a season or two. But with the portal and NIL money, you can change your fortunes a little bit more quickly. It's almost like the NFL that way. It's more like professional sports that way. So I don't know that maybe it's just self-imposed pressure, but he's got 3 or 4 guys coming back for sure. Maybe, not even for sure. So he's basically got to build an entire team in the next, 3 or 4 months.
I hope that, I mean, I know he probably, I don't know, if you read your column, you're willing to give him 3 years before you even decide anything. But, I like that he's putting he's stating a little bit of a goal here, because he didn't have to do that. But I also hope that people hold him to it, whatever that means, progress. We don't, of course you want to win the whole thing. You want to get into the tournament, all that stuff, but just something. What is that? I want to see some improvement. I want to do well the first year. Maybe it doesn't all come in the wins column, but is there something that we can see a measurable, after the first year? Let's see where it stands. But progress, right? And like you said, the portal, there's different avenues to get there. So I hope we hold them to it after the first year and just, hey, you said you wanted to see some progress and you wanted to win. What did you, how far did you get in that direction after your first year?
Well, if it's compared to this past year, then he will probably make some progress. Yeah, he will probably make some. He will probably make some.
Finish with 9, 8 wins.
Yeah, something. Yeah, it was one of those two. It was something like that. So yeah, no, you feel like it's going to go up. No, it's going to be interesting. He's got to build the team. He also said, though, his preference is to, like a lot of coaches, to find young guys and develop them. But he's not going to be able to show a whole lot of progress if he just goes out and plays freshmen. So that's just not going to work. The game is too old. COVID made it even older because of the extra eligibility. You got 23, 24-year-olds out there. That will change a little bit going forward. But that's why we haven't seen freshman teams win in a while. Not since Duke, I want to say in 2015, I think was the last time a team won where the best players were freshmen, where the team was dominated by freshmen. They weren't only freshmen, but that's what's the math on that? Almost 9 years now, Carlos?
Wow.
So it's really changed. And everything, sports are cyclical. We see it in every sport. Speaking of the portal, speaking of cycles, Tom Izzo is now has the worst 4-year stretch and as his during his 26, 27-year tenure at Michigan State. It's interesting that we talk about double-digit losses, nowhere near competing for the Big Ten title in the regular season. He made the second weekend once in the last 4 years. I think he lost in the play-in the first of those 4 years, the COVID year, if I'm not mistaken, when they lost to UCLA, when they didn't box out on a free throw cutout. And anyway, it's interesting that this is where Tom Izzo is. And this is the expectation he's built. They've made the tournament every year. They've been decent every year. They're just nowhere near as good as normal. And I think I even wrote that's kind of a cushy floor, considering it's not easy to make the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And yet some fans are out there, I wish they'd missed the tournament so they have a total reset. But I don't know how much you heard of his post-game sound if they lost to North Carolina. He does this sometimes where he just cuts his vein open. It's like, I was terrible. I need to change. There's an interesting clip, Carlos, from was it last year or 2 years ago where he was talking about the portal. He's like, I'm going to try to stay away from the portal. It's probably going to bite me in the end. And it did. And last week, he's like, okay, I'm going to call some people I respect and I'm going to start figuring out and I'm going to, start having to use the portal.
He's got to change.
He's got no choice.
He's, the thing about it is the big question you have to ask yourself if you're a Michigan State fan is, do you believe Tom Izzo has an NCAA title still in him? Can he make a run and win? I mean, he's won one and it's been a great program, but they haven't really been flirting with like dominance and national, for a while. Can he, and how old is he now? Because he was comparing himself to Saban, but he got those ages wrong. 69. It can't be that much longer. And I think you even wrote about it. And someone asked the question of, basically if you're going to get fired or whatever, and he's like, well, I'll be coaching somewhere, as like a door is going to open for me somewhere. If you guys, I think that was, and you said, oh, it's not a threat. That's a threat. That is, are you listening, athletic director and regents? Because if you get rid of me, I will go somewhere else. And, Tom Izzo, he'll probably win a championship there. He'll be motivated enough to do it for wherever he went. But, there has to be an end game here. There has to be, who knows what his contract is. I don't know if it's a lifetime contract or a year to whatever. But, he can only decide, he needs to decide how much more he has in the tank, how much more he needs to change. I mean, Greg Kampe talked about that too at Oakland, how he had to change, and adapt to players and a different mentality. And, the thing is, the players stay the same age. The coaches keep getting older, but the players still stay 18, 19, 20, maybe a little older now, as you said, with the portal and all that stuff, but and COVID and all that. But do you want it? Do you really want to have to change at 69, 70 years old? I mean, Tom Izzo needs to ask himself that question, but the fan base does too. Can he change enough to have this program humming again and making a serious run in a national title? Because that should be the expectation of Michigan State, really.
Yeah, that is the expectation. I don't know about winning the national title. That's the goal. The winning the national title is the goal. You got to get lucky some years. Every now and again, you'll see a team that's just dominant. Connecticut is that team right now. But most years, the national title winner. I mean, how many times recently we've seen the last second shot or whatever, where the teams are basically even, and one team makes one more play, and it's just that way. And it's fun. It makes for really, really compelling television.
A ref screws up the tip, the out of bounds tip on Oakland, and then NC State wins. So
it's so no, that's the goal. A national title is the goal, but the expectation is to win a Big Ten title in the regular season, and then the Big Ten tournament's secondary. Although he's won that plenty of times too, and then to make a deep tournament run and that's why he said he's gonna He was basically desperate to make another deep. He was going to make another deep tournament run or die trying. That's what that means. It basically means Final Four. I mean, what's interesting about him is he's been to more Final Fours than anybody else in the last 20 years or whatever. And that's, to me, the question Michigan State fans have to ask themselves: is Michigan State a blue blood? Do they consider themselves Kentucky, North Carolina, Kansas, or is this Tom Izzo? Because be careful what you wish for.
Yes,
That's really the thing. That, to me, that's a more existential question. Is exactly what kind of basketball program is there, and how much of this is Tom Izzo, and can he change? He has spent his whole career changing, right? So he's done it before. He had a similar stretch from 2005 to 2009, where he to 2008. It was a 3-year stretch, double-digit losses. Didn't come close to the Big Ten. And he had to and he changed how he was recruiting. And as the game was starting to change then, going for more sort of defense-oriented, I mean, rebounding defensive are always going to be important, but the game was starting to change to that. And he went out and got Kalen Lucas and those guys, and then went on a run, won back-to-back Big Ten titles, right? Went to a Final Four, went back-to-back Final Fours, and has had then stretches ever since. So he can do it. He's done it before. He's had a stretch not quite like this, but he's had a similar stretch to this. This is 4 years. His last one was 3 of this kind of ball. So really, it's up to him. If he can recruit in the portal, he'll be fine. Does his staff need adjusting? Probably. He's lost some good people. I mean, that's another thing. He goes on loyalty and building family atmosphere and having people around. And D'Antonio had some of those struggles in the end. I'm not saying Izzo's quite the same, but he's going to have to take a long, hard look at not just the portal, but the staff, how they teach, how they coach offense, that sort of stuff.
What's been his reluctance with the portal?
He likes to develop. He likes to bring guys in and develop and build relationships. I mean, you go up to a Michigan State game on any given February night, and you'll see 24 players sitting in the stands, and hanging around. That's what he likes. He likes the family atmosphere. He likes the idea of mentorship. He likes of continuity. He likes to see guys get better. He thinks that's how you win, and he had a lot of success doing that.
Yeah,
and wants to teach and send these guys out. Not everybody's going to work out. But they're going to have to figure out their development methods too, because he had a long track record of bringing guys in young and them just getting better and better and better and better. This group has not really. Tyson Walker maybe did. Joey Hauser did last year at the end of his. It's funny, both those guys were transfers, right? Hauser came in before the portal, though. Hauser came in when you had to sit out a year. He had to sit out his first year. And he didn't mind that because he felt like they were earning it. You were earning you couldn't just pick up and leave. You had to come sit out a year. And he liked that. That's old school. So
that makes sense. I mean, it's admirable. I agree with him. I like that idea. But it's just the times are different. You can't live in that space anymore if you really want to be. If you're a competitive team and you have that standard at Michigan State, I'm sure the fans are frustrated with that. They want him to, use every tool that's available to you.
And he's going to have to. We'll see. My guess is he'll give it one more run. He's going to adjust, rethink, and then see if he can do it. Win another Big Ten title, maybe make one more tournament run, and I think at that point he'd call it a career. Did you think that he adjusted one last time as the times changed? What's that? Did I think what?
I thought maybe with his kid Steven, graduating, I thought that might be it, right? Or he might be a little bit encouraged, like, well, that's it. I've seen him through the program. Let's move on.
No, he's a coach. He's a teacher. He's a coach. College guys are like this. He's a lifer. He just does. That's why I didn't think he was threatening when he said, because I heard the tone. I was standing next to him when he said it, and the tone is everything. He's just like, hey, to me, it was matter of fact. If I'm not coaching here, I'll be coaching somewhere else because I'm a coach. Because I'm a coach. It's what I do, and I'm not ready to stop coaching because that means I'll die. I mean, I remember talking to him about that 10 years ago. He can barely stop, right? I mean, he's got to move or he drowns. That's how I think of him. And I remember hanging out with him. It's tough for him to go to his cottage, his family, right? So he just
that's why you love this. You love this guy. You love Dusty May because Dusty May also said he has no hobbies. He's like, just be obsessive. That's the key to a good life.
I think you're lucky when what you do for a living is also what you love and your passion. But as long as you work your family, at least Dusty May said family, right?
Oh yeah. By the way, family. Yeah.
Basketball and family, and Izzo's like basketball and
more basketball.
Oh, I'm kidding. All right,
Luke is over there in the corner.
Yeah. He's built his family is his program, and his own family is part of the program family, and vice versa. Anyway, That's how he likes it. It's all intertwined. All right, let's take a quick break and come right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn and some Tigers baseball. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. It's your favorite sport, right? Or I'm confused, Carlos. Is it hockey or baseball? I don't. Is it, or is it just the season? And summer baseball is your favorite sport, and the winter hockey is your favorite sport.
It's highlight. That's what my favorite sport is. So don't get it wrong.
Anyway, okay. You love baseball. You wrote a fun column about food. You mentioned the Dodgers. I don't think you can write a column about baseball for the Detroit Free Press without mentioning the Dodgers, which I like.
I got another one coming too, by the way. You're gonna just for you.
No, it was so funny. Both you and Jeff Seidel, of course, our other columnists of the Free Press. It was both wrote about baseball today as we record, and I opened it both up, and it was just Jeff's like, "Oh, this is great. I agree with Riley Green. We're going to be great. Everything's great. I love spring training. Baseball is life." And then you wrote, "As I looked out, I. Oh, and by the way, Dodgers. Oh, and let's write about the Tigers here. And by the way, the smash burger is delicious." That was my favorite part of the column. Oh. No. Here's real quick here, because I want to start with this and ask you this, because you wrote a good column. And I was surprised at your take, but it made a lot of sense that because you can't just rely on winning all the time to get fans in the seats. There's got to be other experiences. If you're an owner, and you made a really, really, really good observation that, hey, okay, fine. So they didn't go out and sign J.D. Martinez, but they put a beautiful new scoreboard in, and they're trying to make this fan experience better at Comerica Park. And that was basically the gist of your column, and it was a smart one.
Thank you. Well, unlike some of the unhinged columnists like you and Jeff who think they're going to win the AL Central somehow.
I don't think that.
It's in print. You said they're going to win the AL Central.
It's a guess, like a bet. It's like rolling the dice,
All right. Well, your guess was they're going to win the AL Central. They're not. They're almost certainly not going to win it. And if they win it, it's only because the division is putrid. So you're going to see a lot of bad baseball, and put the money. Comerica Park's it turns 25 this year, so it's showing its age. A lot of fans were complaining about different parts. I don't think the video board was really the biggest thing, but you'll be able to see it better. There's going to be better sound. There's going to be the upgrade of the TVs. Now, Ryan Gustafson, their president and CEO for Illage Sports, was making the presentation. He brought up a good point. He said, with the pitch clock and how much faster the game is now, you miss a lot more. If you go to a bathroom, not a bathroom break, but to get a concession or whatever, the game is a lot faster. So you do need a better TV presence throughout the stadium so that you're not missing as much. So that made sense. It's time to, upgrade the facility. And I still think Comerica, for my money, when you think of it holistically, if you've got young kids, it touches everything. It hits a lot of notes right as far as you can spend your day there. It's the access is pretty good. The parking's good. The entries and exits are good. You can walk around the whole stadium. It's just a great place. San Diego, I don't know if you've been there, Shawn, but Petco Park is fabulous. They have something kind of similar. They have a little bit more street foodie kind of stuff outside the stadium, downtown in the Gaslight District, and it's a beautiful view and all that stuff. But the fan base, I think the Tigers fan base is way more committed than the Padres fan base, and they don't have a carousel. They'd have a little outside little league field, but I think the kids enjoy the merry-go-rounds and the carousel and all that stuff. So what is it? It's the baseball. I forget what it is. So there's stuff for everybody to do, and it's good. It's good that they made this. Now, of course, the Tigers are looking like they're potentially contending and living up to the, Shawn Windsor, Jeff Seidel hype around their trade deadline. Then that doesn't mean, Chris Illage can't open the pocketbook and go get an arm or another bat. They're going to need another bat almost certainly if they want to make some noise. But we'll see. We'll have to see until when that happens in August.
Yeah, eventually they'll have to spend on the roster too. But I liked the idea, right? We got to make it. How many teams are in baseball? 30, 32 teams? 30 teams. So what does that mean? That means the vast majority of the teams are not going to be, or at least the majority of the teams aren't going to be. No, the vast majority of the teams aren't going to be worried about a World Series. So what else? So what else do you have? That's the same in every sport every year. And it's not necessarily our job to say, okay, here's how the owner needs to make money. That's the owner's job. But it is our job to understand sometimes where they're coming from. And the fan experience is important. It is important. Speaking of which, you're right. The only thing Comerica is missing that your stadium may have, although I saw a lawsuit trying to stop this, but I'm just fascinated by this idea. They want to put a gondola from Union Station in downtown LA to Dodger Stadium. I just think that's really interesting. And cart fans through the sky on cables, like in the Swiss Alps.
I don't know what that would cost, but I would pay it. I don't care what, because it is a hellscape getting in and out of Dodger Stadium. So it is by far it has to be by far the worst stadium to get in and out of in the majors.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I just thought that was kind of cool. I saw that and thought of you the other day, and I was surprised you didn't mention that. You know what I mean? That
I didn't see it. No, I'm too busy. I'm too busy wondering about Shohei Ohtani, if he's going to end up in jail or the batting champion or the Cy Young winner. So,
I bring that up because it just goes to your experience, the fan experience. I mean, It goes to your observation. The fan experience matters.
Absolutely.
It really, really matters, whether it's a gondola on cables that is a pipe dream and probably won't ever happen, although the renderings look awfully cool. I mean, we're headed to the Jetsons age anyway. You know, I don't. Well, I guess there wouldn't be gondolas in the Jetsons. They'd be flying their cars would be flying. And that
spaceships, yeah.
Yeah, that's how that would work. It'd be drones, car-sized drones. Maybe that's the answer. In any case, but the Tigers are at least interesting this year, right? You know, they showed a little bit of promise last year. They've got, it's always fun when you got a pitcher the quality and the talent is with as much talent as Terry Skubal. I think that's kind of fun. You got a couple of young bats that are starting to find their way. Maybe a few more coming. We'll see. That's kind of fun. You know, can Javier Baez hit 200? I don't know.
The Mendoza line is so far away from him.
AJ Hinch just talked up his defense this spring and said he's looked better defensively. So that's something, because when he's playing well defense, he's fun to watch. He's got a really amazing glove.
Nobody makes better highlight plays than he does, but the better defensive shortstop is Ryan Kreibler, who's in AAA and not happy about it. So Colt Keith. The big thing is, to me, the big question is Colt Keith, right? Making his major league debut, as we speak, in Chicago, and with the fat contract, 8 years or whatever it is, 6 years, 8 years. And there's going to be, he's going to hit. He's going to hit. Okay, he's going to hit. But, he's never played in the majors. So he's, his first time he's stepping on a major league field is the first time he's playing. He hasn't been called up before. So there's going to be a ton of expectations on him. The defense at second base, we'll see how that is. But he's expected to hit, and they need hitters. So that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure for a guy. And, as Javier Baez gets booed at Comerica Park. Yeah. And anytime
because of the money, because of the money. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what sport it is, but once you feel like you've been paid, the fans say, okay, we want you to produce now. And, we'll see how he responds to that. It's one thing to say, he's good, he's mature, he's got a good head on his shoulder, blah, blah, blah. Once you start struggling, baseball's different. I mean, it's a game of failure. So you're gonna fail, but when you fail at a different level and there's a higher expectation, then that's a whole different thing. You don't know. Everybody responds to things differently. Spencer Torkelson, 31 home runs last year. He's expected to do more as much. He's Riley Green is coming off the injuries. How's he going to do? He's moving over to left field more.
What about Parker Meadows? Are you buying into the
Parker Meadows
spring training, or is it Big Red all over again?
No, he's fine. I mean, I think he has a lot of ability. He's looked good. He's got good DNA, in that family, and he should be serviceable. But to me, Tarek Skubal is the standout. Right after that,
right?
I don't really know. Kenta Maeda's like 100, so okay, great, and that's the one thing is you're looking at these teams. Flaherty had a good year last year. Maeda was okay. He's had a track record, but it's always this assumption they're going to be at that baseline or better. Like, well, people also regress sometimes.
They do. Especially in this sport, right?
especially in this sport. I will say Tarek Skubal is a little bit different. I mean, he's trending up and, he's coming off that injury last year and all that. And so, you expect him, and he's looked fantastic in spring. The guy that I'm really, really interested in is Jackson Jobe.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
I was trying to guess.
That's another thing. Casey Mize was the hot thing, right? And now he's like, holy cow, does he have a future left or whatever? And all the injuries, but Jackson Jobe throwing 102 in spring training, people his teammates stopping to watch him throw. He threw 14 pitches in one inning, and I mean, it was a bunch of scrubs basically, but just blew them away. It was impressive. There are people who think he's ready now, but they don't want to bring him around, bring him up too fast. But there's going to be so much excitement about every time he starts for Erie. I don't know if he'll go from Erie to the Tigers or go to AAA in between, but his starts and his progress this season are going to be closely watched. Evan Petzold on his podcast with Mark Goresh, I think a couple of weeks ago, mentioned they think that Days of Roar, by the way, plug, they have 5 or 6 starts, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood, to see how he's doing. And he, who knows? I don't know if Scott Harris wants to really slow walk him up here and wait until closer to September and the call-ups or whatever, the expanded rosters, or maybe part of this might be contextual, is if they need an arm, if they're doing better, but they're missing an arm and he's doing great, there's going to be pressure publicly from the media as well about, why aren't you calling up Jobe? The dude's he threw a no-hitter. He fanned, 14 in his last start, all this stuff, like, what are you waiting for? So that's going to be a whole different conversation, but something that really interests me to see what happens with him. He's one of the more exciting pitching prospects I think I've seen with the Tigers in a long time. So I eagerly anticipate his arrival.
Joel Zumaya without the black and white checkerboard vans.
Or the Rockstar air guitar, right? Let's hope make sure he doesn't have that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's at least interesting. It's not, I mean, winning the Central is probably a pipe dream, but the Central's not that good, we assume, although, you never know. One of these other teams in the Central could be good. They could get hot. It happens. You assume they're all going to be garbage, but maybe one won't be.
Hey, since I have to talk about the Dodgers, what did the Dodgers win last year? 100 games last year. Arizona Diamondbacks won 84 games, second place, and went to the World Series. They beat the Dodgers were beat up in that first series with the Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks started playing really well at the end. They were healthy. They got great pitching. So I'm not saying that they're
baseball.
But I'm just saying that you can win 84 games. Team doesn't have to beat the Dodgers or whatever, the Yankees or whoever it might be, the world beaters, and you can still get to the playoffs and actually win a series, if not more than that. It's not unreasonable.
Yeah, get all the way to the World Series.
But Javier Baez, and I will say the whole thing that, right, with Miggy gone now, he's retired, and that's an addition by subtraction. And to me, the other question is Baez. How long does that last? How long are they gonna, have to watch him and before they start sitting him for games? And
yeah, because that can be a drain, a mental drain too, for not just Baez. You feel for Baez or Hinch, but for the team, no, for sure. I think that's why you love baseball, because an 84 team can get to win, team can get to the World Series. It's similar to hockey that way. The regular season doesn't mean squat. I'm exaggerating.
Well,
I'm exaggerating.
It's overly. They play too much. It's too long of a season. Really, they should emphasize the playoffs a little bit more. But yeah, it doesn't help you as much. And then now with the wild card and all this stuff, like, you don't get rewarded quite as much for your regular season.
No, for sure.
Expanded playoffs
for sure. But we can all agree, nice stadium that got a little bit nicer. No gondola yet. Who knows? Maybe you can one day go from the river to Detroit River to the Comerica on a gondola that up Woodward Avenue. That would be hang a little right there. That would be.
We got the people mover.
We do have the people mover, and we got a train that's comes down Woodward, so you can get on that. It's not, the people mover, at least you're up a little bit, so that's not so bad. But anyway, nice stadium. It's always been a nice, pleasant, family-oriented stadium. Look, I know, folks, it's not Tiger Stadium. It doesn't have the history, but it's a comfortable, much more comfortable place to watch a game. It's a family place. It got a little bit better, and the team's going to be, I would think, at least interesting. So that's not so bad. All right, let's move on, Carlos, to your favorite part of the show. And that would be your favorite thing. What you got?
My favorite thing was Shawn Jack Golke and what he did with Oakland University and Oakland's not a run, but upsetting Kentucky, right? They were the 3rd seed in Pittsburgh. And that game was the most enjoyable NCAA game I've seen in a long time. We've been around a long time. We've met and interviewed and known Greg Kampe and the program he runs, and just he's such a unique character and coach, and you can't do anything but root for guys like that. What was he, a 6-year transfer from Albion because he wanted to get an MBA,
Hillsdale, right? I think it was Hillsdale.
I'm sorry, Hillsdale. My apologies. And just going crazy, shooting from anywhere and everywhere. I think my buddy Billy Woods, who worked for the New York Times, was there in Pittsburgh, and he was writing a story about it and covered it. And he had a great line. He said, he went from being a concern. I think he said something like a concern to an annoyance to a 5-alarm fire, for Kentucky. And it was just such a crazy, fun game. And you always root for the underdogs. I do, at least in the tournament. They were such a great underdog. It was just a joy to see him do that. So I was so sad that they didn't get a move on. And they lost to NC State in overtime, but it was such an enjoyable short ride, unfortunately, but it was a great ride. It was my favorite thing last week.
No, that was really fun. It created a lot of buzz. You love it when a player gets hot like that. What do you have, 10 3-pointers, I want to say, against 10. Kentucky, and the way he was taking them, some of them were great shots, but a shooter like that gets into a rhythm. It doesn't matter at that point. I mean, he banked one in. That was some kind of divine act there. It was just their night. It's funny because when they played North Carolina State on Saturday, I guess it was for the right to go to the Sweet 16. I was working on Michigan State, North Carolina's post-game stuff, and I had to keep an eye on it, and then I watched the last bit of it because if they'd won, I was going to have to book a ticket to Dallas because that's where I was going to go with them. And as I went into that day, by the way, Carl's thinking, okay, I got 2 shots. I can either go to LA or Dallas, but I kind of just had a feeling that I wasn't going to end up at either one. And this is my favorite time of the year. I mean, I love the tournament. I love going on, but it's also okay. Hey, there have been plenty of runs between both Michigan State. So, you can't get that run. You can't get that run.
Here's
every
my
year.
question. I thought about this with you, and if Michigan State wins, they go to LA. If Oakland wants to go to Dallas, if they had both won, where would you have gone?
We talked about going to State because ultimately, even though the Oakland was probably
because we have the Lansing State Journal and Graham Crouch who already covers them. But
Oakland,
go ahead.
Did you look at our numbers? Oakland is a great.
The Oakland did amazing.
Oakland is a great story, but we just couldn't do that to the Michigan State fan base. And it's just a lot more. It was just a numbers game.
It'd be a black and gold wall if we went to Oakland.
Yeah, it was. I
would have been happy to go to Oakland.
It was strictly a numbers game. That decision was made before the tournament. Before they slotted everybody, I was actually, because a couple of years ago I went to Michigan and Michigan State in the same tournament, and which was fun.
That was insane.
And we were gonna try to do that if it worked out with this one. That would have been really fun. But no, we had to go with Michigan State, just with what the season had been, what was on the line, what was at stake. But I didn't really think they were going to beat North Carolina. So, but my favorite thing, real quickly, speaking of North Carolina, we landed Charlotte. You mentioned Graham Couch, Lansing State Journal, our own Chris Solari, a couple other people making that trip.
Hog hoops heaven down there with your buddies.
Yeah, you never know what people are willing to do for a meal. But I knew that we got in the early evening, the day before the availability starts, the news conferences start. And I knew where the airport was and where there's some place I wanted to go to, a little town called Lexington, North Carolina, about an hour north of Charlotte. That's a long way for people that don't care a lot about food. For me, it's nothing. But I also knew that was our only shot. To my pleasant surprise, that group plus Joe Rexroad, another former Freeper who was in town because he's a columnist for The Athletic and covers all things Tennessee. Well, Tennessee was in the same same first and second round spot. They were in Charlotte too, along with Michigan State. Not the same side of the bracket, but in any case, so Joe was there. And Joe and I used to be on the road together a lot back when I covered Michigan State for a couple of winters, 12, 14 years ago, whenever that was, 13, 14 years ago. And so it was like getting the old gang back together a little bit, and everybody went up. Carl pulled up, had some of the best barbecue anywhere in North Carolina. It's really simple, just a few things on the menu: pulled pork, coleslaw on the bun, a little bit of sauce, the best hush puppies you'll find anywhere, and homemade pies. I don't know that you need anything more than that. I really don't. But the best part was just kind of seeing some longtime friends and having everybody be up for a little adventure on the only time that it could have worked out. So that was my favorite thing by far.
That's impressive. An hour, right? 2 hours round trip, really.
Yeah. And people were probably tired. They landed. It's dinner time when they land, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most folks just want to go get in their hotel, walk around the corner, get something to eat, and settle in, right? But
those are the day briquettes, yes.
Yeah, but these folks actually said okay, and they did it.
Good. Proud of them.
So I was, and they were happy they did it. You know, got to see something a little bit different. Got out in the country a little bit, see something a little bit different. But in any case, all right. Who was taking Carlos?
Let's thank our producer, fact checker, Robin Chan. And it's been a while, actually, so he's probably not used to all the heavy lifting with all our audio problems from you and me. And also our executive editors, Kirk and Crawford and Anjanette Delgado, and pre-press editor, Cole Avery Nichols. But Shawn, who's the most important, we've been missing them for a while.
We have been. Sorry about that. We were on a little hiatus, but we're back. We want to thank you all for joining us, the listener, of course. You can find us wherever you find your podcast. When you get to your favorite podcast, of course, when you get there, subscribe, rate us, let us know what you think. And speaking of fact checking, we'll try to do this into the show, fact checking. Ward Manuel did not hire Jim Harbaugh, and I know you didn't. I don't know if you meant to say that or not, but he didn't fire him when a lot of people wanted him fired. So that may be just as important too. I'm trying to remember why who was the AD before Ward Manuel hired him. His name, he was a Ford guy. His name escapes me. This is Jim. God, this is terrible. Robin, I can't believe you're not providing this kind of information. In any case, God, this is well. We'll look it up and I'll undo this foolishness next time we join you on the Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. How's that sound?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Robin's giving us excuses here in the chat. He didn't want to talk. He's something about how baseball is the only sport he knows. Actually, what he means is baseball is the only sport he loves or tolerates. Is that what's going on? Or like, I don't know. All right. Until next week, Carlos, when we're back with more Free Press and Sports with Carlos and Shawn. I just want to keep saying Carlos as many times as possible. I think that's right. All right. Good to see you, bud. We'll be back next week with more of the show, and thanks to y'all for listening.